Hey guys, you're watching Black Desk Media, and on today's episode, we're talking about Logan. Logan, released March 2017, marks the final installment of the Wolverine trilogy. It is directed by James Mangold, starring Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, and Daphne Keane. Loosely based on the comic series Old Man Logan, tells the story of a weary Logan hiding from the world, caring for an alien Professor X. However, his world is disrupted upon the arrival of a new, young mutant. Although I've been a huge DC fan over the past few years, I was a huge Marvel fan growing up. The main thing I was exposed to, as I'm sure many of you were, was the 90s cartoon X-Men that usually showed on Fox Kids. It was not only one of my favorite shows as a kid, but it remains to this day what I recognize as X-Men. I own several of the action figures, I played this game on Sega Genesis, and the X-Men Evolution show wasn't too bad until they canceled it just when it started to get good. Before I go any further, I'm going to give you my overall thought on the X-Men franchise as it stands today. X-Men 1, I think, is a great movie. It was groundbreaking, it paved the way, and it was a pioneer for pretty much every superhero movie we have today. Because of X-Men and the chances it took, it opened up the door for a world of possibilities. It's not my favorite, but it's a great, solid movie and a great introduction onto how a comic book movie could play out. X-Men 2 is a perfect escalation from the first one in almost every single way. The action is great, the characters get more developed, there are plot twists around every corner, and it manages to take a huge cast and still make a functional story out of it. Not only is it one of my favorite movies, but I think it's probably one of the best comic book movies they've ever made. I mean, to this day, I've yet to see an opening like the one with Nightcrawler in the White House. And you can't deny that when you first saw this, you were like, wow, this is badass. We all know how horrible X-Men 3 was, and X-Men Origins Wolverine. I mean, God, what is this? Wow. I'm not a big fan of First Class. For me, it's a little too corny. I appreciate it being a period piece in which it, kind of pulls from the time period that it's based in, and it pulls in a lot of, really cool set pieces. But there's just an overall feel to it that I can't buy into, that again doesn't match the tone of the first two movies. Days of Future Past wasn't too bad of a movie. I mean, I thought it was okay. For me, it just kind of spent too much time in the middle. It wasn't really far back enough in the past to see the characters we knew in First Class, and it wasn't far enough in the future for us to feel justified about the characters we met in the first two movies. And in some ways, it overlooks and rewrites the First Class anyways, that it just kind of feels like it's in limbo. I didn't see Apocalypse, but I did read the plot, and from what I've heard from everyone else, it wasn't very good. And just kind of by seeing it, it seems like it kind of disregards First Class and Future Past. And not to mention, one of my big gripes with it, without even seeing the movie, is the fact that it's a movie about teenagers who don't know how to use their powers fighting one of the most powerful villains in the Marvel universe. Not the X-Men universe, the Marvel universe. As a kid, Apocalypse scared the crap out of me. He just had this overall dominating presence. And in the trailer, it looked silly, so I didn't bother seeing it. I didn't see The Wolverine. I figured after X-Men Origins, there was no reason to see the next one. And I've talked to a lot of people, and I think I've read a little bit about it, and it just doesn't seem like it's something that I really needed to see. And if you want to count Deadpool as part of the X-Men universe, that's cool. I think Deadpool was a pretty cool movie. I'm surprised it took them so long to get Colossus and Deadpool right. I feel like those are pretty much basic fundamental rules. I mean, you have a huge catalog of comic books and TV shows and action figures to go back to. It blows my mind sometimes how some people can't get the basic fundamentals right. Needless to say, going into Logan, my expectations were extremely low. Sure, the trailers were great, but it seems like everybody nowadays knows how to make a good trailer to sell a crappy movie. And the initial thought was, man, after a series of bad movies, there's no way they've all of a sudden got their act together to make a great movie. It just doesn't work like that. If there's one thing I did like about Logan, it was the tone that was set. It was extremely grounded in reality. The shots were beautiful. It had a great, somber, dark mood to it that was something that I could buy into and take seriously. Gone was the overall corny, comic booky, wacky theme. I loved how the movie pulled back from a bigger scale. Like, no longer was the fate of the world at stake, but they pulled it back and really made it about the characters, which I feel was something that was missing in the past few X-Men movies. Now, although I'm not the biggest fan of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, I mean, again, my vision of Wolverine is the short, stocky, hairy, scruffy kind of guy who hangs out in the back room. That's why I like Wolverine so much, because he's not the hero, he's not the main character, he's the rogue. And I like that. I gravitate towards that kind of character. But I would say that Hugh Jackman probably played the best Wolverine we've seen since X-Men 2. The first and biggest issue I had with this movie came pretty early on. This was in many ways pitched as the most action-packed, violent, gritty, and gory Wolverine movie that we were going to get yet. When it was announced that Logan was rated R, fans rejoiced because that meant we were finally going to get to see some blood on those metal claws. The action scenes were shot so close and so fast, I couldn't really see what was going on. It was so focused on showing you their claws go through every single person's leg or chest or face, and every kick and spin and flip, that it really took away from the emotion of the scene and pretty much devoided it of all suspense. Where one moment the movie was a slow, deep, gritty drama, it quickly changed into an action movie as soon as the fighting broke out. Secondly, the action started off at a 9 anyways. The first 2 minutes of Logan are him fighting like 8 guys all at once and killing all of them, despite being outnumbered. And honestly, that's really as good as the action ever gets in that movie. And in an action sense, that doesn't give the movie anywhere else to go. It pretty much just gives you everything you've been waiting for right at the beginning. So there's nothing else, there's no more anticipation. They've already hit their peak and it's just coasting, cruise control from here on out. This movie also depicts Logan in a different way that we've not seen yet. In this movie, Logan is vulnerable, he's sick, and he's dying. But I never really felt that struggle throughout the movie. There's this really great shot at the very beginning where he's having trouble getting one of his claws out of his hand. But it doesn't seem to really affect that fight scene or the rest of the movie. I think it would have been really interesting if for that fight scene, Wolverine couldn't put out his claws and he had to kill all those guys with his bare hands and struggling while he did it. It almost would have helped build up as well when the claws finally got to come out. It's also obvious that this movie was heavily inspired by the game The Last of Us by Naughty Dog. Now, although The Last of Us is an action game, the biggest difference between the two is how the action is portrayed in that game. No matter what, the game is always about the emotion of the characters and of the scene. So no matter if you're blowing up a zombie's head with a shotgun or bashing some thug's face in with a bat, you never forget that it's about their desperation to survive. And you feel that, and it comes through every scene. And it's extremely important. And it creates this beautiful poetic structure, and it's what makes that game so great. With Logan, I never felt that struggle. I know it's depicted that he's old, but it doesn't seem like that keeps him from doing what he does best, and that's killing people. I would have much rather seen a movie where he was having to sneak around for a bit because he could no longer take on 12 men all at once. That would have allowed you to see Wolverine use his brain and his wits on some more creative kills so that by the end of the movie, he could go on full rage and give the fans what they've always been waiting for. I mean, how cool would it have been, like in X-Men 2, to see him crawling around his little hideout, choking men out, breaking their necks, maybe bashing their kneecaps with a metal pipe, really having to use what he knows other than his claws. I mean, he could still use them and you could still get the gore, but it wouldn't have just been an all-out brawl right from the get-go. Arguably, the best sequence in the movie was at the end, when you see Wolverine running through the woods, taking out 2 or 3 guys at once before he leaps onto a final one, pinning him against a tree. It's a great structure, it has a great flow, and you can actually see him kill those people. Another great sequence was the scene in which Charles has frozen everybody and Wolverine's having to claw his way through the hallway, and he gets in that room and there are all those goons surrounding Laura and Professor X, and he has to kill them one by one. Alright, before we go any further, I'm going to talk about spoilers. I've thought about it. I'm not doing that to try and spoil anything for anybody, but I feel that in order to give you an honest review of how I feel, and to kind of save the workaround of you asking me again after you see it, I need to tell you how I feel about everything about the movie. So if you haven't seen it, go see it, or if you don't care, keep watching. Overall, I was okay with this movie until a certain point. Up until this, the movie was grounded in reality, I could buy into it, and it had ditched that horny, goofy feel that the other movies had in them since X-Men 3. And then black clothes, black tank top, bad version Wolverine shows up. For me, This absolutely destroyed an otherwise perfect scene, the death of Charles Xavier. Let's get it out in the open. The only reason, beside him being a clone of Wolverine, of him being Hugh Jackman in younger version, was to trick the audience when Charles got stabbed. Many people said, oh yeah, when Logan is saying it wasn't me to Charles, that it's for Charles, and it is. It's a great little intimate moment, but it's also for the audience, for the people who didn't pick up on what was happening. That was only there for the effect for the audience to go, oh my God, what's he doing? Oh, that's not him. Who is that? It just added an overall goofy feel to the entire thing. It was just so reminiscent of X-Men Origins. He already has so much on his plate. Adding one more baddie for him to fight wasn't very smart. It just came off so gimmicky. I mean, how many times have we seen that already? And the action scenes between the two fighting each other weren't interesting at all. All they were was just them taking turns stabbing each other as many times as possible. And it got old really fast. And then he goes and sort of kills him on this Friday the 13th style kill. It was just, It was far more interesting in X-Men 2 when Wolverine had to fight Deathstrike. Not only did Deathstrike have more claws than Wolverine, but she was clearly smarter and more skilled in combat. This gave a great dynamic to a scene that could have been boring, like in Logan. It made it interesting, to the point where you didn't know how it was going to turn out. And instead of stabbing her like 37 times, he pumps her full of adamantium. When I first saw that, I thought, whoa, this is awesome. I did not expect this to happen. And it's so twisted and so demented that it's far more effective than what we got in Logan. If they really felt like he needed a bad guy to fight, I would just much rather have been the guy with the metal arm. He was already there, and he could have been a really cool, skilled assassin that was outsmarting Wolverine in every way. So that Wolverine would have had to have killed him using more than just his claws. A couple of other things I had a problem with weren't too big of a deal, but they were an issue for me. One being the kids at the very end in the woods chase scene. You know, they're all getting round up and they're all getting captured, but the movie's already established that they're all lethal killing machines. And they've definitely established one of them as being one already. X-23 takes on like 12 guys at the beginning of the movie and completely dominates them. And then when Wolverine rescues them, all of a sudden they start kicking ass and using their powers. And I'm thinking, why didn't you just do that already? And I also didn't like the adamantium bullet thing. I mean, I don't know much about adamantium, but I know it's invincible. So would adamantium go through an adamantium skull? And even if it can, his brain's gonna grow back. So I don't get how that was supposed to be effective when X-24 got shot in the head. And it just kind of serves as gore. And again, between the two scenes, this is more effective. Overall, I thought it was okay. I think this movie could have easily been an 8 or even a 9. But those two problems, one with the fighting being shot so close and the other being the stupid bad Wolverine part, it brought it down. It is, however, one of the better X-Men movies, being under X-Men 1, with X-Men 2 being the best. I give Logan a 7 out of 10. Alright, that's it guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, if you liked what you saw, click here to subscribe.